There are some stories you hear and instantly dismiss. Until the timeline starts lining up, the quotes feel familiar, and the pattern looks impossible to ignore. The newest spark claims Meghan once wanted Prince William, not her father, not Charles, to walk her down the aisle. Wild? Absolutely. Proven? Not yet. But the reason it explodes across feeds is simple. It plugs straight into a bigger arc that's already documented. Warnings to slow down, a whirlwind romance, a family split, and the long aftershocks still echoing years later. This video doesn't pretend rumor is fact. It separates what's alleged from what's recorded and asks a harder question. Why does this claim stick so easily to the story the public already believes? When you follow the steps, who said what, who stood where, and who paid which price, the aisle rumor becomes less about a single request and more about power, hierarchy, and a rivalry the palace never wanted to name out loud. So let's rewind the tape. We'll revisit the wedding choreography everyone saw, the private cautions that turned into open fractures, the cost of stepping away, and the reason a single rumor in the present can reframe a royal event from the past. By the end, you'll have the receipts, the context, and the space to decide what you think actually happened behind those polished smiles. Start with a record. On May 19, 2018, Meghan entered St. George's Chapel alone. At the choir, she was met by the then Prince of Wales, who accompanied her the rest of the way to the altar. That choreography was public, published, and replayed by millions. It was presented as her request and his assent, a dignified solution to the sudden family turmoil that unfolded the week of the wedding. Now contrast that with the allegation. A commentator says Meghan at one point wanted William to be the one. No official confirmation, just a claim that lights a fuse because it targets the fault line that already split the family. The line between the heir and the spare, the dutiful future king, and the brother who wanted a life beyond duty. The rumor isn't powerful because it's proven. It's powerful because it fits the story people think they already know. And that's why we need precision. Two things can be true at once. The public record shows Charles walked Meghan through the choir, and the circulating allegation says she originally wanted William. One is documented, the other is unverified. The danger isn't acknowledging the rumor. The danger is forgetting which side of the line it sits on. Long before the wedding, the brothers hit a moment that many families know too well. Caution that lands like criticism. Multiple accounts describe William urging Harry to slow down. Don't rush this. Take time. Get to know her. It sounded sensible to the older brother who'd learned, sometimes painfully, how much pressure and cruelty marriage inside the institution really carries. Harry reportedly heard something else entirely. He heard condescension. He heard the system speaking through his brother's voice. He heard the phrase, "this girl," and bristled at what he took as a dismissive tone. What William meant as protection, Harry received as judgment. And from there, everything got louder, sharper, harder to take back. That moment matters because it becomes a prism for everything that followed. A rumor about William walking Meghan down the aisle lands differently once you know he had already asked Harry to pump the brakes. It adds a layer of drama people can't resist. The careful heir, the headstrong spare, and a woman placed between love and legitimacy, romance and rank. Look at the timeline on paper and you see acceleration. They met in 2016, were publicly engaged in 2017, and married in 2018. Fast by royal standards. Fast by any standards. The world watched a modern fairy tale unfold, a popular prince and a successful actress building a life that looked fresher, more global, more open than anything the monarchy had offered in years. Speed creates momentum, and momentum creates expectations. The Australia tour looked like a coronation of a new power couple. Confident walkabouts, warm crowds, big headlines. But momentum also magnifies friction. Inside any ancient institution, sudden star power doesn't just inspire, it threatens. Spotlights shift, headlines reassign attention. Protocols that kept everyone in their lane for decades start to look like cages to one side and guardrails to the other. When the aisle rumor reappears in the present, it hits that tension right in the ribs. If you see the couple as modernizers pushing dusty tradition to adapt, The claim reads as another example of people twisting a story to fit a bias. If you see the couple as ambitious players who wanted the status without the limits, the claim feels like a missing puzzle piece. Either way, the speed is the part nobody disputes. The wedding staging wasn't accidental. Meghan's solo walk to the choir telegraphed independence. Meeting Charles halfway balanced dignity with grace. It honored the moment without pretending the week's chaos hadn't happened. The music mixed tradition with modern feeling. A reading by Lady Jane Fellows tied Harry back to Diana's side of the family. Every beat served a symbolic purpose: continuity, compassion, unity. Years later, authors would say not everyone was comfortable with all of it. Reports surfaced that the late Queen wasn't thrilled with the idea of Charles standing in for Meghan's father, that there were concerns about optics and precedent. That's not an official statement, it's a reported sentiment. But it reminds you how carefully every step inside that chapel was weighed, and how much pressure sat on the shoulders of everyone involved.
Now imagine laying the William rumor over that choreography. For people who already believe tension simmered under the polished surface, the claim feels like confirmation. For others, it's a leap too far. Either way, framed against the actual order of service, the allegation functions like a Rorschach test. You see the story you brought with you. Then came the decision that made the aisle rumor more than a curiosity, stepping back from royal duties. In 2020, terms were agreed. No HRH usage in practice. Financial independence, reimbursement of renovation costs at Frogmore Cottage. In 2021, honorary military roles were relinquished. A symbolic and practical break, written down in careful language, but still a break. To supporters, it was the only sane path. The couple had endured relentless press attacks, impossible expectations, and internal resistance to the changes they represented. To critics, it was a strategic exit. Keep the spotlight, shed the duty, and turn the royal brand into a commercial engine. The truth, as usual, sits in the messy middle, where principle and opportunity often hold hands. This is the backdrop that makes a single rumor from the wedding echo years later. If you see the exit as a principled stand, the aisle claim feels petty and unserious. If you see the exit as the climax of a long game, the claim reads like an early tell. Same rumor, totally different meaning, depending on where you stand. Once the couple left, the story didn't end, it multiplied. Interviews, documentaries, podcasts, court cases, book tours, public statements, quiet counter briefings, and never-ending microclips dissected frame by frame on social media. A glance becomes proof, a pause becomes motive, a headline becomes gospel if it confirms what the viewer already suspected. That's the narrative economy, attention flowing to the angle that feels most satisfying to believe. In that ecosystem, the aisle claim is perfect fuel. It's short, spicy, and emotionally loaded. It has status games, sibling tension, and a whiff of forbidden symmetry, the future king escorting the woman who would later clash with the institution he embodies. It raises the stakes without needing new evidence. And crucially, it can be told in one sentence, which means it travels farther than any nuanced correction ever will. That's why separating allegation from documentation matters so much. Not because rumors must be ignored, but because they must be weighted properly. A claim without proof might still be interesting. It might even be true. But it can't carry the same authority as the things everyone saw and the agreements everyone signed. Titles became the battlefield everyone could understand. The couple retained their ducal titles, but agreed not to use HRH. Honorary military roles went back to the crown. Later, Frogmore Cottage was vacated, turning a family residence into a symbol. A home with lights off is easy shorthand for a relationship gone cold. Every new flare-up, how someone signs a note, which form of address appears where, reopens the same wound. That's why a tiny detail can set comment sections on fire. A style used in the wrong context becomes a referendum on the entire split. A rumor about who was asked to walk where becomes a referendum on the couple's motives from day one. The monarchy speaks in ritual, The internet speaks in screenshots. The clash was inevitable.
Seen through that lens, the aisle claim is less about romance and more about rank. It suggests a pull toward the center of power, a desire to anchor the moment to the brother who will one day wear the crown. To some, that sounds like audacity. To others, it sounds like a woman trying to find the most dignified path through a very public crisis on a very public day. Again, same detail, two interpretations. There's another layer people can't stop reading into the story: the relationship between Meghan and Catherine. The public version is minimal: smiles on duty, coolness in private, competing narratives afterward. But the archetypes do the heavy lifting. Catherine represents steadiness, patience, and a decade of proven restraint. Meghan represents change, urgency, and a modern, media-fluent voice unwilling to be quiet when she feels wronged. When audiences line those archetypes up next to the brothers, William the heir, Harry the spare, the symmetry writes its own script. Every glance becomes a chess move. Every seating chart becomes a statement. The aisle rumor slots neatly into that symmetry. If Catherine stands beside the heir, the claim paints Meghan reaching for the same center, even for a moment, even in speculation. It's important to remember how much of this is projection. People bring their own families, their own rivalries, their own feelings about tradition and rebellion to this story. That's why the same set of facts can produce wildly different verdicts. You're not just judging them, you're testing your own values against theirs. So where does that leave us? Proven. Charles escorted Meghan through the choir. Proven. William cautioned Harry to slow down and it landed badly. Proven. The couple stepped back under terms that limited styles, ended honorary roles, and shifted finances. Proven. The brothers' relationship suffered publicly documented strain. Possible that Meghan floated the idea of William walking her down the aisle at some stage in the planning. Unproven. The motive behind such a request, if it happened. Persuasive to many. That the request, true or not, fits a broader pattern of ambition, caution, and clash. Persuasive to others. That the claim survives only because it flatters a narrative that was set against Meghan from the jump. The reality is that families rarely give you tidy endings, and this family least of all. The institution rewards silence. The modern media economy rewards confession. Put those two forces on a collision course and you get exactly what we've seen for years: a constant tug of war over who gets to define what happened and why. The aisle rumor functions like a mirror. If you think Meghan wanted the spotlight more than the service, you'll see proof everywhere you look. You think she was pushed to the edge by an inflexible system and an unforgiving press? You'll see survival where others see strategy. If you think both can be true, you'll recognize that love and ambition, duty and independence can coexist without canceling each other out. So here's the only fair takeaway. The record shows a careful, symbolic solution on the wedding day, a brother who warned, a couple who left, and a crown that kept moving. The allegation about William remains an allegation, but the reason people click is bigger than a single claim. It speaks to legacy versus attention, tradition versus reinvention, and the cost of choosing one when the world demands both. Legacy rarely answers back. Attention always does. Somewhere between those two poles, a family is still trying to live with the choices it made. Whether you see a calculated play or a misunderstood request, the aisle rumor doesn't rewrite the story. It reveals how you've been reading it all along. Strip away the noise and you're left with a stark outline. William urged patience. Harry followed his heart. Meghan walked alone, then with Charles. The couple stepped away and paid the price the crown required. Everything else, motives, rivalries, whispered requests, lives in the gray area where myth thrives and certainty dies. Maybe that's why the story refuses to end. The monarchy has survived for centuries by outlasting storms. The couple has survived by telling their side louder than the storm. And the public keeps watching because somewhere in this saga, we see our own battles between duty and desire, belonging and freedom, silence and the right to speak. The aisle rumor is a spark. The real fire is everything it lights up in us.